But first of all, what is critical race theory? Perhaps the best known phrase, and I thought about perhaps what is the best known phrase in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court in decisions that have been written there. There have been a lot of them, but I think one of the best known could also be applied to the critical race theory argument, particularly in answering this question: what is critical race theory? Have you noticed we hear a lot of terms thrown around, but do we really understand what they are? Well, it was Justice Potter Stewart many decades ago, and it was a case involving whether hardcore pornography is obscenity, of all things. And I know you came to the Tea Party to hear about that, right? But that was the case. And it was the case in which he famously said that he would not attempt to define the materials at hand, but said, quote, "I know it when I see it." And, you know, there's a lot of smoke being generated by people who are trying to say critical race theory or its alternative names is no big deal. It's just something being taught in some law schools. It's very obscure. It can't be taught in our school systems because it's too complicated. However, while the form of CRT being taught or considered for teaching in our schools may not technically be the same as some of that technical and less problematic curriculum that's being taught in our law schools, I think Kentuckians will know, don't you? I think they'll know radical racial instruction when they see it. If you go to the legislative research website, legislature.ky.gov, and look at 2022 pre-filed bills. Click on bills, go down to pre-filed bills for the 2022 pre-filed bills. So remember, we've already had this year's session, so this will be for the next year's session. And click on there and you'll find the complete bill there, or you can find it mentioned on our website at bipps.org, bips.org, Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy Solutions.org. His bill takes this approach. It may not be called critical race theory, but we know critical race theory when we see it approach. In fact, his bill doesn't even mention critical race theory, which I think is the right approach. Instead, it simply states the concepts or materials that would be prohibited in schools. I think this is very good. This is a very specific bill. And so he mentioned several of them, like assuming or suggesting that an individual, by virtue of his or her race, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, will be prohibited. Or suggesting that a student bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race, or a student's made to feel, quote, discomfort, guilt, anguish, or other form of psychological distress simply because of race, sex, or religion. Also includes bans on other types of instruction and materials, and I'm really glad for this one. It includes a ban on teaching that meritocracy or traits such as hard work are racist or sexist or were created by members of a particular race to oppress members of another race, or that the Commonwealth or country is, quote, fundamentally or irredeemably racist or sexist. And finally, I think we can all agree that advocating the violent overthrow of the United States government is also banned. I think we will know when we see that, don't you, that that's critical race theory. Are you getting this? Having a teacher who's drunk the woke CRT Kool-Aid, dividing a classroom of elementary school students into two groups, one group of white students on one side of the classroom, students of color on the other side, with the teacher saying to the white students, okay, all you kids are inherently racist, and you all owe these kids on the other side of the room an apology. And then she goes to the kids on the other side of the room and says, you go on now as an oppressed people. You're oppressed forever. You're downtrodden. That kind of nonsense has been going on under the cloak of CRT. 12 states, including neighboring Tennessee, have banned the teaching of CRT. Legislation's been introduced in some other of our surrounding states, as well as with various penalties. I like this, such as in Ohio. If teachers there, according to what's been introduced, if they promote any of these banned ideas, their classes cannot count toward graduation requirements for the students in those classes. I think that's a great idea, because you parents can't be there every day, and we don't have cameras in the classroom. Maybe we should, but having students know that their graduation is at stake, now we've got some interaction going on here, and I like that. I like what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis observed. He said, quote, "The woke class wants to teach kids to hate each other rather than teaching them how to read. But we will not let them bring nonsense ideology into Florida's schools." Can we have him as our governor? Now, there's every reason why Kentucky parents should be concerned about this creeping into Kentucky schools. A couple of weeks ago at the National Education Association's annual convention, that's the big teachers union in the country, they adopted an item on their agenda that called for CRT to be in schools across the nation. In fact, 3 times it mentions the teaching of CRT in that agenda. Now, you say, well, that's a national group, it doesn't have anything to do with Kentucky. Well, guess who introduced this, Jim, that says, quote, "We oppose attempts to ban critical race theory and or the 1619 Project." Guess who introduced that? It was a teacher from Louisville, Kentucky. So do you think we should be concerned about it creeping into Kentucky schools? Now, 1619 Project, of course, is another very controversial program that is not historically accurate, according to a number of historians. And that doctrine, if you will, propaganda, tries to teach us or tell our kids that everything in this country's history centers around slavery. It centers around the first boatload of slaves into America in 1619, and that, in fact, that is when our country began. I believe that our country officially began with a constitution that begins with the 3 words of not we the teachers union, not we the government, not we, a handful of radicals trying to stir up trouble, but we the people. We the people. We want our kids to get factual and accurate picture. Yes, there was slavery in this country. Yes, there have been racial inequities. But isn't it ironic that we have these huge achievement gaps between black and white students, where it's, in most cases, the percentage of poor black children proficient in key academic areas is very low. In some areas, it's even been in the single digits in some categories of academic subjects. But it's been this way for decades. And it hasn't been fixed. And now all of a sudden we're being told that the same schools who can't fix the achievement gap and can't close the achievement gap, and not only that, oppose charter schools and school choice, which have proven to close the achievement gaps, but they're going to fix the inequities now. Doesn't that make you feel all warm and fuzzy all over that they're going to get it done? Highlands High School, right here, was considering adopting a new course entitled Social Equity. Now, you know right away, right? When you hear that, there's a problem. It's a red flag. But there actually is a problem with this. The syllabus prepared for this class, and that we got a hold of it, indicated that, quote, I want to tell you what exactly it said, quote, "Ethnic slurs, anti-immigrant, classist, sexist, and homophobic remarks / sentiments, and religious diatribe / hate speech will not be acceptable commentary for this class, and appropriate action will be taken if those things occur." But notice, when it was mentioning offensive verbiage, it didn't say anything about Marxist diatribes or socialist diatribes or even political diatribes. Why didn't they just leave it at generally diatribes, but instead it had to be religious diatribes? It reeks of bias. Now, I'm proud of the parents who showed up and pushed back very hard against this at the Highlands School-Based Decision-Making Council meeting, which decided to pull the course for the year. But this is the type of eternal vigilance that will be required by parents from now on, especially those in public schools, when it comes to what's being taught and who is teaching it.